And it says we're live, and we never know.
Hey.
So I get to start every live stream the same way, saying, I have no idea if we're really live or not. But I see us live on YouTube. It's actually working. It's amazing.
Hey.
Technology. Now the question will be, can everybody see and hear us okay? I think the seeing's okay. It will be the hearing us that is always the challenge. What time is it for you, Ben?
It is 5 p.m. So
Okay.
we're at the end of our working day here.
Day over. I still got more meetings after this.
Ooh.
But it's lunchtime now. I got to sneak in lunch between the last meeting and this meeting. So now I'm full.
Squeeze a couple of tacos in.
I'm sorry?
Squeeze a couple of tacos in, did you?
I wish. My son got the leftover tacos from last night. So I had a nice pot of beans and ham. So if I have to mute my side, you'll understand why.
Yeah.
All right, we're seeing that the audio is good. That's excellent. We got people watching here live. I just sent out a bunch of notifications, so hopefully we'll have some people joining us. We've been looking to do this for a while, so I'm glad the day's finally here, Ben.
I'm looking forward to it. Yeah, I think it's, for me, it was like one of those weird. I don't think it's unfair to say that imposter syndrome sort of thing for me. But the more I sort of talk to people about it, it was like everyone was like, "This is really cool advice." So I was like, "I need to do a talk about this." So yeah.
Yes, the imposter syndrome is hard, and that is for everybody. I don't think it ever goes away either.
No, exactly. But yeah, no, I did a few dry runs with some business mentors and stuff like that, and they even got something out of it. So I mean, God, hoping that everybody here on the call today actually gets something out of it as well. So
excellent. Well, let's we gave everybody 2 minutes. That's enough vamping for me. Let's get this thing on the road. All right, good to see everybody here today. Ben has graciously offered to come talk to us about outsourcing, which is something I know as a solo agency is so scary to do. Not only do you trust people to actually take care of your baby, that's part of it for me. Like, I don't think I'm the best at everything, but I want everything done my way, so that's hard to do. Trusting people, not getting ripped off. That's another one. How much you have to charge to actually effectively outsource something and not be working for free. That's a huge challenge as well. Managing people. I'm not really good at managing people, so I would love to hear some tips on that. And I think we're going to get a lot of good stuff today. So I'm going to quit blabbering. I'm going to put Ben's, he's got a slide deck here for us. I'm going to put that on the screen. I'm going to hide myself away from here, but I might interject if I have a question or if something pops up in here. We are going to save some time for Q&A at the end of this. I'll be monitoring the chat, so drop your questions in there. If you use a little hashtag Q, it's a little bit easier for me to find, but I'll be grabbing them as you drop them in, so don't hesitate to do that, and we'll make sure to answer questions at the end of this. And Ben, I'm going to share your screen there.
He's going to hide himself. Cut yourself a bit early there, Kyle. No worries. Well, I mean, firstly, thank you, Kyle, for having us on here. Basically, as Kyle said, basically, talk's going to be all about outsourcing and sort of helping you with some tips and sort of my experiences within outsourcing, helping you go from solo to scalable. So who am I? Who is Uprise? Well, Uprise is a company that I built and started in 2019. I have a background for close to 20 years now, which makes me feel incredibly old, in web. And I've been sort of working for myself for most of that, actually, in various guises and different consultancies or anything like that. As the accent will probably say, I'm over here in England. I'm in the southeast corner, sort of just about 40 minutes south of London. And yeah, basically we run Uprise, which is a white label outsourcing agency, which is we help and work with agencies, PR agencies, marketing agencies, and web agencies, and we are basically an outsourced team for them doing web design and development. So I appreciate the chat's probably lagging a little bit behind, but as Kyle actually said really eloquently, actually, as we started here, I'm guessing a lot of people have had issues with outsourcing, whether that is the managing projects, making sure you're making profit on jobs as well. So be interesting, as Carl says, if you've got any stories to share, please do put them in the chat as well. We'll be happy to look over those, and hopefully we'll be able to answer some of those questions as well that you may have, or some of those issues you've had in the past. So let's have a quick look at why people do outsource at the end of the day. There's a good quote here that I've got I pulled out. According to a survey, 90% of businesses who outsource gave outsourcing the credit for their successes. When I saw this stat, this is by the Outsourcing Revolution, by the way. When I saw this stat, 90% of businesses who outsource, it seemed crazy to me, because I've had problems with outsourcing. I set Uprise up literally for that reason, because we wanted to be the change that we wanted to see in the industry. So how come 90%? The other question you've got to ask yourself is, why do people do it? This from the same survey, basically, we've got a couple of stats here. To cut down on cost, 59% of people, which is a great way. When you look at hiring a whole team of developers, designers, etc., that cost is huge, and will be comparatively to outsourcing it. And I want to highlight here is the increase in capacity as a service provider. You don't want to be turning away work at the end of the day. Nobody likes doing that. And yes, you may be working on a higher level projects, for example, maybe working on projects at a minimum of, say, $5,000 or pounds minimum engagement. But what are you doing with the other ones that are coming in that are maybe a couple of thousand, for example? We are used quite often as sort of that overspill work of stuff that is just easy, simple brochure site sort of things, for example. Great way to maintain your brand, and those clients may turn out to be something bigger in the future. And the other one where we work quite well, again, and we see a lot of people, is expansion of service offerings. As I mentioned, we work with PR agencies, marketing agencies, SEO agencies, for example, and they want to offer this as part of their service. They want to have their clients, working with them and their brand more and more. So therefore, they can offer that service as well. So outsourcing gives you the ability to basically increase what you actually give to your clients. So the thing is, what you'll probably all know is that when you're a solo or part of a small team, it's all up to you. You wear every single hat in the book. And it's the famous phrase: working on your business, not in your business. That is nigh on impossible a lot of the time when you are solo. You have to do your development, you have to do your finances, you have to do your admin, you have to do your sales, marketing, everything. And I'm pretty sure most of you will probably be familiar with a site like this. Now, if you're a developer like me, this is actually probably your preferred place. Is a nice dark room. We're developers, we like dark rooms. But working late nights, it's very difficult and challenging as well, because you have to have this work-life balance. If you're not actually getting quality time outside of work, your work will suffer at the end of the day as well. So outsourcing allows you to be able to scale and your business as well by offloading some of these things to you. So let's have a look about me a little bit. Take back a little look back in time. This was me, this barefaced guy. This was 2016. I was in New York at the time. I was on holiday, and I was, exploring New York, which is an amazing city. The problem is that I wasn't enjoying it, as this candid photo that my wife took of me will show. I was absolutely consumed this whole holiday with anxiety and stress. I was on holiday, and it seemed like a good idea at the time, booking a holiday, but ultimately I was being sort of really taken over in my head by deadlines, client emails, and stuff like that. And what happened is that I was working from like 5 a.m. till 10 a.m. most mornings. My wife's a bit of a late, wakes up a bit late, and sort of 10 till 1 a.m. every single day, trying to keep up with client demands. And basically, I was working pretty close to a full working day on holiday in the wee hours of my holiday. So there's no way around it. And I'm sure a few of you probably done something very similar, going on holiday and having to work a little bit during that holiday. And at the end of this trip, I really didn't enjoy this trip. So what I decided to do after this, I made myself a goal. My goal was going to be that I wanted to not give up 50% of my development work, and not do any support tickets at all. And so I went out to the market, and I found an outsourcer, and you know what happened? It failed. In fact, it failed really badly. The first week or two was great, but then the freelancer I selected started passing half finished work back to me. They didn't understand the instructions I was giving, and ultimately they ended up ghosting me and not coming back to me. And my client, quite obviously frustrated by this, demanded their deposit back and also left a bad review on Google, which is a terrible situation to be in. I was £5,000 out of pocket, and I've got a bad mark on my Google. So, what do you do? What do you do? Undeterred, basically, I decided to get back on my feet. I decided, this is probably just the outsourcer. I didn't look at myself at all in this. I thought that I'd given everything clearly. So I went and on a different project, got a new freelancer, and guess what? It failed again. Freelancer in this case ended up being quite nice, actually. They ended up sort of holding their hands up after about a week, saying, "Look, I might have overstated my capabilities here. I don't think I'm going to be right for this job, unfortunately." So, which is fair enough, and it was in the early stages, so I was able to recover the job and did it myself. But ultimately, it was just like I felt really, really deflated. And it begs the question, why am I doing this over and over again? I mean, Albert Einstein said it. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. And this just doesn't happen. So after I spoke with a few of my agency owner friends, I was working in a co-working space at the time. And, there was a few agencies in there, and so basically, I said to them, have you outsourced before? Have you got anybody good? Most of them had experiences exactly the same as mine. And in the end, basically what we did, as I said, we set up Uprise basically to become the change we wanted to see in this outsourced market. Let's have a quick look, and stepping away from that, and have a look at what you can outsource, because there's beyond web development and graphic design, etc. Outsourcing is not just sort of about what you produce, it's also about the business in general. You can outsource things such as sales. You can get people to do your pitching and closing, believe it or not. I'm sure most of you all have accountants, but you can get people to do your invoicing, credit control, like chasing those invoices to get paid, and your bookkeeping. You can do marketing. So not only just selling marketing to your clients, but doing your own marketing, planning, creation, execution of those sort of bits and pieces. Project management as well. One of our team here, Naomi, I don't know if she's watching. Hi, Naomi, if you are. We've got a project manager who does things like timelines, onboarding, client communications, all of that. That was a huge weight off my mind, being able to put that with somebody else. We've got design, obviously wireframing as well, website design, graphic design, and obviously your development, building, SEO, even like outsourcing just a part of that as testing potentially. And also there's plenty of companies that you can outsource to do maintenance as well. So ask the question, why do so many people give up on outsourcing? And well, it's likely for me the same reasons that I had. It doesn't always go well. You get ghosted, mucked around, overcharged, missed deadlines, receive poor quality work. The list goes on. I put these actually all into 4 categories. Those are budget. Those are issues not making enough profit, creeping costs, for example, communication, different languages, unclear expectations, and unclear briefs, quality of work, whether this is a skill misalignment, an inconsistent output, attention to detail, and like I had, freelancers overstating their capabilities. And you've got availability and commitment, things like missed deadlines, time zone management, quick questions that you can't ask, as opposed to actually having somebody next to you in the office. You've got commitment, freelancers juggling multiple clients, ghosting before completion. And so what I want to do is dig into these a little bit with you, and show you some of my things that I do to run a really good outsourcing project. So let's start with budget. So the biggest issue around budget, I believe, is always going to be your profit margin. You need to make sure you're making profit on every single job. There's 3 areas which I commonly hear that destroys profit margins. Those are your scope creep, unexpected costs, and poor budgeting. And luckily, 2 of these things can be magically erased by a discovery and deliverables document. Now, I know what you're doing, what you're probably going to think, because a D&D, as we call them, it's everybody knows what discovery is. For those that don't know, by the way, so effectively a discovery is where we have an interview with a client. We do a full sort of session with them to understand what it is they want from a job, what they want to achieve, and we can find like hidden value in that job basically as well. And it allows us basically to properly outline expectations as well. So once you've done a discovery document, we create something called a deliverables document. And that deliverables document basically just outlines everything that you're going to do for your fee. As I say, we call these things D&Ds internally. And yes, I am a 40-year-old something that still plays D&D every single week. And yes, this does make me chuckle every time we have, say, D&D in a meeting. Right. If you don't have a discovery blueprint, by the way, you can scan this QR code. This is not the only time this QR code will be seen. So if you miss the scan right now, it'll be right throughout this whole presentation and also right at the end. Basically, you can go swipe ours for free. We've got a new resource which we call the Outsource Academy. And basically, there's loads of free resources on this, and it's completely free of charge. So grab as much of that as you want. Now, this is what I think is essential to a successful D&D, and this is to get the client to confirm and sign the D&D. Okay, so the reason why we do this is that if the client decides halfway through that the project that they want extra work, which we all know happens, they want this extra, ultimately it's going to cost you more, especially within a freelance, especially if you're freelancing this. And so all you need to do is just refer back to your D&D and say to them, you know, this is what we agreed. This is, as you will agree, probably extra and outside of that scope. So therefore, can we discuss a supplemental quotation? Ultimately, they've got not a huge amount to fall back on, as they've literally got a signed document saying, I agree to this. And so, let's say, we always use D&Ds. Okay, the next thing we want to look at is pool budgeting. This is the third issue, basically, is a tricky one, because ultimately, I'd imagine most of you would ask your freelancer for a quote on your work, and you'll get an estimate back. You know, it's sort of vague and probably non-committal a lot of the time. So what I like to do is make sure that we get a price basically quoted from the D&D. Because ultimately, what we don't want to end up in is scope creep happening, or the job taking longer than we expected, and ultimately we end up in a situation where the freelancer is asking for more money than we're actually charging. Ultimately, we end up with a bit of a family man situation. So what I suggest here is asking for a fixed price quotation from your outsourced partner. So with your freshly signed D&D, send this to your outsourced partner and request that fixed price quote. We recommend using something what we call as an RFQ, or request for quotation document. Again, in the link which I'll show you in a minute, you get a free there's an RFQ document that we can send over to you. And what this does, basically, it bundles the whole of the discovery document, the deliverables document, all together, and basically requests them to give you a price for this work. What this does is two things. A, it shows your outsourced partner that you're not mucking around. You know, you've done your work already. You know exactly what you want delivered. The second part of this is that it gives them the confidence in you, that they are able to give you a fixed price quote, because you've literally listed all the things they want to deliver. So any freelancer or outsourcer worth their salt will probably look at that and go, I can base my quotation quite easily because I've been told exactly what I need to provide. Again, here's the link for an RFQ if you want to do it. It's the same link as before, and it'll be the same link all the way through. Again, it's all in our Outsourcing Academy. So let's give you an idea about an example quote. So this is one that we've got here. This is a demo one from us. So if you ask us and send us a D&D or an RFQ, this is the sort of thing you get back, basically. It's a very simple basic quotation saying, here's what we're going to provide, and the price you pay. And even we actually even add a suggested RRP to our quotes as well. So again, this is a fixed price quote. It's not going to change as long as the scope doesn't change. The price does not change, and that gives you a lot of ability to go, okay, I know exactly what my profit margin is going to be. And while we're on the subject of profit margin, let's have a quick bit of maths time. So this is how we would calculate a job, basically. Firstly, you need to take into account your team's time, you and your team's time. Don't forget, you're spending time creating the proposal. You're potentially doing the work, putting it onto your server, for example. You're doing some account management, presentation time, etc. So make sure you've got your time included in that. Times that by your hourly rate, and then take your fixed cost, and we times that by our cost multiplier. In a lot of cases, we suggest 2xing costs at minimum. And put these two figures together, you end up with your total cost. So just as an example, let's say team time, I'm putting 5 hours times by your hourly rate, £75. So that's 375. And then you've got your fixed costs. Double that gives you 4220. Ultimately, your total cost is £4,595. Then that to your client, and off you go. And you know you're making at least a minimum there of £4,220. Sorry, £2,110. Sorry, on this job without even having to think about it. Again, we've got a nice little quote calculator in the Outsource Academy. Feel free to grab that, swipe it, and it'll do all these calculations and everything for you. There's plenty of space there to expand out as well beyond web development if you're into SEO or anything like that as well. So help yourself. Let's talk about the second issue, which I think a lot of people do get scared about, and that's communication. So the three main issues that people have is when communication. Thankfully, two of these affect with the D&D. Unclear expectations and unclear briefs. Well, we've eradicated that. We've got rid of the unclearness of a job to giving that to a freelancer, because at the end of the day, we've told them exactly what we want to do. And there's not going to be any doubt about what is required from that job. The next one, a little more tricky, and that is talking about different languages. There's many differences to offshoring work. Most notably, some countries have low expected hourly rates, and so you get better value for your money. But don't forget also that there are countries out there that have really highly skilled people in certain job roles. So effectively, you don't need to geofence yourself into your own country or into your local area. You can go and get the best people in the world to be working on your project. Unfortunately, the downside is that language barrier. At this point, I suggest selecting an outsource partner that speaks your native language. Okay, this is probably the most guaranteed way of doing it, and I mean that in terms of first language. So if we're English, we're looking for another English-speaking person, a freelancer. Throwing briefs, emails, etc., into Google Translate really gets messy. Believe me, I tried. And it leads to inaccuracies and ultimately frustration. So my first choice, as I say, is always hire someone who speaks your first language. The next step from that would be select someone who actually speaks your language as a really second language, and that's as in they're using it daily, for example. I don't settle for anything less, because I value the fact that communication is probably one of the biggest things when having a partnership with somebody. And I'm using that word deliberately, partnership with somebody. Having language issues really does cause problems when it comes to these sort of things. So that's my rule here, and I suggest something similar for yourselves. As a good example, here's one of those aforementioned issues that we had. This is actually an example. I pulled this out of a slide deck from years ago. This is actually a message thread from somebody, and it's pretty painful. You know, they basically got confused that CTA meant content area or something, I think. So save time and hassle by choosing a native or an excellent language comprehension, basically. Let's look at a third issue, and that's quality work. Again, rule of three here. The three main issues that I see coming up when discussing the quality work are inconsistent output, attention to detail, and overstating your capabilities. There's a few things that I've got up for this. I mean, inconsistent output can be an issue. Some days the work may seem on point, and the next day it's lackluster, not even there. It doesn't even happen. You know, missed deadlines. Don't let your outsource partners go weeks on end without any kind of check-in. Some of the best methods to overcome these issues are to implement checkpoints throughout a project. So literally, when you get to finishing the homepage, for example, check in with me and we'll go through it together, for example. The other one, and we do this very typically, is just doing weekly updates on a weekly basis, same time, every single week. We will do a call with our client and say, right, here's all the projects we've got. We're doing a bit of a show and tell, show the progress, for example. And it works incredibly well because every single week, that freelancer, that outsource partner has to show up and provide some work. So there's the momentum there for them to not be doing it all at the deadline day, basically the day before. So book a call with your freelancer at least once a week and ask them basically to turn up and be ready to show the work that they've done over that week. It's like treat it like show and tell. The other thing to do is create a really good feedback loop. So there's tools out there like Ataren, markup.io, for example, two of the really, really, really good tools that we use internally here. If you haven't got an account, go grab one. Andrew Palmer, who works for Ataren, really, really good. Send him a message, tell him I sent you, say hi, and he'll set you up with a really good free trial of Ataren to have a look at that. Basically, if you're not familiar with these sort of systems, what they are is what we call click and comment systems. Effectively, you can load in a design, you can load in a JPEG, or even literally you can type the website address and it will automatically just bring that up on the screen, and then you can then just click and comment on the elements of that site. There's never going to be that issue of like, oh, look at a big Word document that your client sends you and it's like third paragraph down, third word along, changed there to there or whatever. It ultimately just gets rid of a huge load of issues that we found. Makes it really, really clear, and also speeds the process up, which is awesome because if things go through quicker, your client's going to be happier, and also your freelancer is going to be happier as well that you're giving really good, clear feedback. Attention to detail. Can be. I mean, Carl said at the start as well. This is something that comes up quite a lot when work comes back to you that has faults. First thing I need to do is basically just ask you to look at these things objectively. I highly doubt there's going to be anybody who's willing to provide a piece of work that's wrong. However, or wrong in their eyes, should I say? However, to save time and frustration, ask that the outsource partner reviews their work thoroughly before actually sending it to you. Using a checklist. It's probably the easiest way of doing these things. We've got plenty of checklists in our process here, and we use them all the time, basically at certain milestones, for example. So get your outsource partner to go through a check sheet that you produce for them before submitting work, and it'll omit like 90% of the quality control issues that you see. If you want to steal ours, again, it's all in the Outsource Academy. Scan the code, log in, and grab yours free of charge. So the other thing I need to point out is getting you to understand and give constructive feedback ultimately. If you don't like things a certain way, explain that to your outsource partner. You should only expect them to make this mistake once at the end of the day. Typical things I've seen in the past, and on engagements with us as Uprise, but also just like other freelancers, etc., saying, "Oh, I've got this issue with this client," etc. Things can be really sort of like this client likes to have 120 pixels margin on sections, for example. How are they supposed to know that without them presenting a piece of work to you first, going, "What do you think?" So this is going to be very much a give and take over the course of your engagement with this person. Ultimately, we need to understand that as the relationship grows, you'll find that your partner knows what you like, and they'll provide that good work to you that you in the way that you like it. Just don't expect them to know right off the bat what you haven't already told them effectively. Again, just remember, what you constitute as good work is an opinion. Everyone has a unique concept of what constitutes as good work. Provide constructive feedback, and you shouldn't have to worry about it again. And this is the thing that happens over time. It's not an overnight thing. Let's talk about availability and commitment. Sort of the PTSD part of the presentation for me, because this is where a lot of things went wrong for me. One of the biggest downsides about outsourcing work is the inability to get a quick question answered. You've got in an office environment, you can turn over your shoulder and go, "Hey, Jim, what are we doing about this particular client, etc." It's really hard to do that when you're in a freelance environment, because ultimately you're likely not to have people on on the end of a phone or anything like that. So the thing to look at really is, how do we get over this? Well, what is basically a frustration? You need to remember that an outsourced partner has other clients, and if they are solo, and they have any good time management, it means they're not focusing on their inbox or Slack or Teams, for example, throughout the whole day waiting for your message to come through. So how do we solve this? Well, there's a couple of things we do. Firstly, I like to agree with with the partner the availability and response times in advance, and this is an engagement. So, for example, a good one that is sort of boilerplate template that I would say is, replies within 6 hours to messages and available for calls at least twice a week. And it's a handy way also to gauge your partner's bandwidth when you're talking to them. Are they overworked, or are they willing to take on more? They said, well, 6 hours, I could probably do that in four, actually. And that's great. You can talk. This is all about engagement as well, by the way. So a good way to do that, as I say, ask them to be available for. It doesn't mean that you're asking 6 hours, for two calls a week. It's just you need to be available for two calls a week at least. And this is what we call effectively an SLA. We agree with your partner those response times, those call arrangements, and as I say, handy to work out your partner's bandwidth as well. This is a bit of a not sensitive subject. This is something that I find a lot of people say is great, but I need to stress one point to this. So, and that's messaging systems. Okay, so we've got Slack, Teams, and there's plenty of other sort of messaging systems out there. They can be really, really good for quick questions, those over-the-shoulder questions that we talked about. Having your outsourced partner on a messaging system works really quick, is really good, and it's quick, etc. But I need to stress a point, and I can't remember for the life of me where I saw this. There was a whole presentation on this, but I need to make sure that you need to say that asynchronous is asynchronous. And what I mean by that is basically is that just because I message you at a certain time doesn't mean I'm always available. All you've been able to do is get your message to me quicker than I would probably likely be able to see it, whether it's email or anything like that. Ultimately, we need to respect our freelancers' time and their commitments as well. We are not their only client a lot of the time. But again, with the SLAs that we've put in place, we're just making sure that that message is clear and center of focus effectively when they come round to seeing it. But yeah, I don't always rely on these messaging systems because ultimately I don't want to end up looking like that pushy client that all demands a response instantly and straight away. So when you send a message via those systems, don't expect a message straight away. Again, it's just a different delivery method as opposed to email, which can be lost within junk, etc. as well. The last, and I feel is really important point to this, is involve your freelancers in your business. Now, I'm not saying like open your books up to them and give them access to the financial records and the bank account. What I mean by that is get them committed to and involved in what's happening and what will affect them effectively. If they've got views and opinions on a certain job, make their voice heard. If the partners are ultimately engaging, you don't let them don't stifle them and I'll say no, this you're doing it my way because I want it done like this, etc. Open up, to these things. I've had an amazing experience with freelancers in the past where we had an upcoming project and they came back to me a few days. I discussed it with them, and they came back to me over the weekend and said, "Hey Ben, that project we're talking about on Monday, I've done some testing over the weekend. I reckon we could do it like this and this." I mean, we haven't even got the job yet. The guy's not even getting paid to do that research. But wow, that buy-in that you've suddenly had from your freelancers saying that they've gone over the weekend and done some research, etc. So do talk to them, not just about current projects, but talk to them about upcoming projects, exciting stuff that's happening, people that you're talking to, And who knows, they may have a network as well that they can rely on and feed stuff to you to help you get a job over the line, for example. Ultimately, everybody wins. If the freelancer says, I'm going to do this research and blah blah over the weekend, it will help us get the job, then they win as well because they get the work. Okay. Another point to really make is consider potentially a retained contract. Um, Now, this basically what this does is gets you excellent buy-in effectively. If you give someone basically guaranteed amount of hours per day, per month, for example, they're going to basically committed to you effectively. This works really well to solve that availability commitment issue because basically what you can say is like, right, okay, between the hours of say 10 and 12 a.m. Sorry, p.m. 10 a.m. 12 p.m. You're working on my projects. Effectively, you've got them available to call, to message, etc. Ultimately, you've got them basically exactly where what you don't need to do the guessing of when they're going to be available and working on your projects. Um, the downside, I guess, to this is that you do lose that ability of the fixed price quotes, as I mentioned right at the start of this. So, what I suggest is have your partner work out how many hours they reckon each job is going to be. This is something I would typically recommend if you've had a couple of good engagements, have a couple of good completed projects with that freelance partner, and then offer that retained contract effectively afterwards, because you know that they're getting committed, they're doing good work, and they're producing it on time and with good quality effectively. So they're getting to know you a bit more, and that'll be the time where I'd consider looking at a retained contract if you're looking for a freelancer. And ultimately, again, I can't help myself with a gift. It's all about building strong partnerships and strong relationships with your partner. If you share in the success of a job and the pain of a client that won't stop giving feedback over and over again, and the job will never die. Sharing all those bits and pieces. So again, that weekly check-in, great time to be doing these sort of plans and check-ins after the show and tell. Talk about what's coming up, what jobs coming on, how you're getting on, how's your sports club of the week, etc., working, etc. So build a good relationship with your partner, and they will act like they're part of your team ultimately. I don't want to put this onto a bit of a downer, but be prepared for it not to get right first time. I've worked on both sides of this fence, and sometimes the relationship just doesn't work. Freelancers may feel that your work isn't fulfilling for them, or ultimately they've got better offers, and you may have a personality clash with them. It happens. Move on. There are literally plenty of fish in the sea, as we say. Um, and ultimately, once you've found that right partner, the one that really works for you, again, sorry, indulging in my GIF habit here, it's a good feeling. Really, really is, honestly, because as I say, there are people out there that will act like they're part of your business, part of your team, and really, really good way to once you've got that, it's really, really good. So let's have a talk about where you can find these people, because ultimately you're probably all sitting there like, okay, let's give this a go. Where do I find them? Well, there's a few things, and my slide's gone weird, so sorry that my logo is already there. That's not deliberate. First place to look potentially is your marketplaces. We've got Upwork, Freelancer, Fiverr. I mean, Fiverr Pro, not Fiverr normal. Avoid that. A Fiverr Pro, which is more like Upwork, effectively. These are great places to find freelancers ultimately because in the marketplace you've got some guarantees. Everything's put in escrow, and so if they ghost you or leave the job early, etc., then you get your money back effectively. It won't avoid the pain and discomfort ultimately, but it will mean that you're more likely to get a better level of freelancer from these things. Downsides is that you probably will end up paying a little bit more because these marketplaces do charge more per. They basically charge the freelancer something up to 20% in some cases, I think. And so a lot of freelancers, they will up their rates effectively to accumulate for that. But ultimately, a good place, and obviously it's an open market, so therefore you can see things like reviews and see how people have got on, see how much they've actually used the platforms. Another place is just finding independent freelancers. look at referrals, speak to your fellow agency owners, get on tab, ask if there's anything on there. I don't, sorry, Carl, I don't know if that's actually allowed, but you can put that in the comments. The other thing is look at meetups. I run the local WP WordPress meetup here in Tunbridge Wells in Kent, and we've got plenty of freelancers that join us here, and it's great. I love putting two people together. So we've got a business owner here and a freelancer there. You guys should talk because this person works really well with this. So get involved in your local meetups, and it doesn't have to be WordPress related. Go to tech meetups, networking events, etc. Get yourself out there, because one of the best advice I ever had from a business mentor was that if you don't get out about, how do you know that you're alive? Ultimately, to get out, do some meetups, and you'll see that you might actually end up meeting some freelancers that would be really useful to have on board with you. Job boards are really good as well. So Indeed, Monster, those sort of places, they actually allow people to post for freelance work. So have a look there. That's proven successful in the past, I believe. One of the hot tips I'm going to give you is co-working spaces. If you have a co-working space in your local town, city, get in there, because ultimately co-working places are going to have a lot of freelancers, etc. I'm really lucky here that we've got about 4 or 5 co-working spaces. And one of those is actually dedicated for freelance designers and developers. So it's like a hub for having work done, for example. The other place, obviously, well, this is more design world, but have a look at Dribble, Behance, for example, as a good place to do it. And yes, as you probably already alluded to, the other slide, you can have a look at a dedicated white label agency. So a white label agency is a company that literally this is all we do. We are a company that outsources all of our work. We take no credit. Whether we win awards, we don't, or rather, the website winners awards, we don't celebrate it. We are completely anonymous in the background, doing the work and getting things done for those people. So, and the great thing about that, with an agency, you typically will find that there are more setups. So, as an example, all of our developers are fully employed, 100%. We don't outsource any of our work ourselves, and we've got a project manager, we've got a CTO who's in charge of things like making sure that technology that we work on is up to date and performing well, etc. So you end up with a bit more security on that in that side of things with an agency. But ultimately, all of these options are great places to find and get work done for your agency. So let's have a look about how to hire. And for those of you who are in America or outside of the UK, effectively, the guy behind here is Alan Sugar. He's the guy that does The Apprentice. You got that in America, I think, and other places. So sorry if that's a bit of a strange one for you, but being British, I have to put these sort of Britishisms in here. So let's have a look. Firstly, check the portfolio. That's going to be pretty easy. If you meet a freelancer and say, "Can I have a look at your portfolio?" They're generally either going to have their own website, or you can ask for some suggestions from them. Request references is the other thing. I've got no problem for anybody coming to us, for example, and saying, "Hey, can I get some references for speak to some people who are existing clients of yours?" And yeah, no problem at all. We can have a chat to our clients, see who's happy to get on the phone, and we can do that. Same with freelancers, same with everybody else. Request some references. Ultimately, at the end of the day, it's not going to be anything that they should be objecting to, unless obviously they're brand new to the market. And in which case, maybe give them a try. Maybe give them the third thing, and that's a paid test job. I recommend doing a paid test job in every single scenario. Secret tip: with paid test jobs, never give them a time scale to complete it. So let's talk about a test job, for example. It could be within the development world. Maybe just send them a Figma of a homepage and say, "Can you build this?" Okay. Now the secret tip: if they ask, about timescales, when do you want it, just say, "Whenever you got time. Don't worry about it." If they come back to you in 3 weeks' time and saying, "Oh, by the way, sorry, here's that," give up on them. The people that literally come back to you overnight are the people that you want to be like, grab them with both arms and hold them, because they're the sort of people that are going to make the effort. They're the people that really do amazing work. And a lot of the people that we actually hire at Uprise, we put them all through paid test jobs, and every one of them has either come in within overnight or a day of producing work. And it's one of the litmus tests that we use here, is basically to say, if you're gonna do a paid test job and you want to show off to us, do it as quickly as possible. Don't leave it for 3 weeks. And yeah, we've hired and fired sometimes based on that. So that's a really good tip that I'll give you. The other thing is, discuss terms and payment schedules with them. Are they willing to match your cadence of invoicing, for example? A lot of people, in our industry, in the web development industry, we go 50-50 typically. So we do 50% up front, 50% at the end. Is your outsource partner willing to match that and come along with you? So you're never going to be out of pocket. It's a really good thing to do. If you can get a freelancer to basically match your payment cadence, then you're never going to be out of pocket. And ultimately, it means that your revenue and your profit margin, and ultimately your cash flow, is going to be superb. You'll never be out of pocket. You're only paying for what you get in. Let's have a quick review. First thing, always provide a D&D document. Second, get a fixed price for that quote. Fixed price quote for that work. Ensure your team and your own time is factored into your price. Don't ever forget that. Quote confidently to your client, and at least with a 2x multiplier of your outsourced costs. 5, hire native language or excellent second language partners, and do not compromise on this. Number 6, schedule a weekly check-in with your outsourced partner, discuss ongoing jobs and future opportunities. 7, use something like Atrium or Markup for easy and frictionless feedback. Number 8, give constructive feedback. Don't expect the first job to be faultless as your partner learns your preferences. And number 9, alleviate availability issues using SLAs and messaging if necessary. Number 10, and the biggest thing I want you to take away from this, build that relationship. Treat your outsourced partners like they're a part of your team, and they will respect you and give you great work and longevity. So, again, thank you so much to Kyle and the whole and the admin bar as well. Let me speak to you today. Please do come find me on LinkedIn. Just search up my name, Ben Tiffin. I'm typically one of about 3 people in the world, apparently. And don't forget, if you want all these free resources, the little code there will get you into our Outsourcing Academy using that QR code. Just in case you are interested as well, I have put in here a code which gets you 50% off your first 3 months with Uprise if you want to. So if you're in a position that you want to get on, jump on our subscription service. I'm going to give you 3 months free. This is exclusive to this talk and available all the way through till the end of May. So do jump on a call with me if you want a demonstration about what we do. Thank you very much. Kyle, you with me?
I'm here, man. I've been here the whole
dude.
time, hanging on every word. Excellent work, my friend. I really, really appreciate that. I know we have one question here in the chat that I've starred, and I'm going to get that one. I have a couple that I'd like to ask you too, while I have you here. But if anybody else wants to drop anything in the comments, now's the time. We already got comments here. An amazing webinar. This is excellent. We like that. And I know I covered up your QR code here a minute ago with my little banner, but if you're watching this on your phone, it's hard to scan a QR code. If you go to the admin.bar, not the admin bar, but the admin.bar/outsource, that just redirects you directly to the link that's there inside that QR code. And I'll make sure to put that in the chat as well. The admin.bar/outsource. All right, excellent. So let's see here. We'll go to these questions here. So this first one is from Some Web Studio. When writing quotes or proposals, do you typically include meeting times as part of the project, or is that something you don't track?
It's a really good question, actually. So typically, I would include. We don't include it in our work because we sort of work somewhat in the background, but it's something that I would consider to make sure. I mean, what we would do a lot of the time is have a line item called account management, and whether there are phone calls, etc., with the client, or in our engagement potentially back and forth between the agency, for example. That we have a line item called account management, and typically what we do is we just do that as a factor of the overall work and hours that we put in. So I think account management equates to 10%. So 10% of the overall hours that we spend on developing and designing a job, we will also charge like 10% for account management, project management, etc.
So if you quoted 10 hours in the project, 10 hours of design,
We
development,
put
all
in
that,
1 hour of account management.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes it easy at least. All right. Bill has a question here. Roughly how much do you usually budget for test projects, say for graphic design?
So graphic design is an interesting one. So graphic design, I'm going to presume, Bill, you're talking about producing flyers, business cards, stationery, etc. Those sort of things. I mean, a good thing to do potentially would be give them a brief on a flyer, like an A5 flyer. Make it fairly simple. Don't add too many things in there. Make it fictitious if you want to as well. Maybe select your favorite band. I've seen this done before in the past. Select your favorite band that they're playing at your local place and get them to create a flyer for that potentially. That's a really good one for graphic design. If you are talking about web design effectively, I'd say homepage is kind of like the go-to really, because it kind of tests all elements on UI, UX, etc. Understanding about their ability to in terms of like flow of a homepage, for example, as well, when we talk about design. It's very hard to get right, and it usually highlights some of the weaker candidates that you'll find in there. In terms of budgets, I mean, it varies. It's, again, for a flyer, I wouldn't expect them to spend anything more than about 4 hours, and be reasonable in terms of your hourly rate. So maybe just give them a cap budget. Say, I want you to spend 4 hours on this. Something like homepage, I'd say something more like 5 if they're 5 hours. And again, it's the thing of saying, accumulate, just speculate to accumulate. Ultimately, you will uncover some gems, but you ultimately will also find some really rough stuff in there as well. So it's just about sifting through. But just before, it's a golden rule: never let them attack a client job unless you've actually tested them.
Yeah, that's and you'll know the ones that definitely aren't a good fit right away. So you'll at least eliminate that. Some Web Studio has another question here. I guess this is one for Uprise specifically. What page builders do you specialize in with your agency when performing outsource work?
Yeah, good question. So we work predominantly in Elementor Pro, but we're also starting to work on bricks, and we've got experience in Oxygen as well.
Excellent. All right, I got a couple questions for you. So going back to your math equation where you had kind of your hourly expenditure times your hourly rate, then you had your fixed cost times 2. How much time do you have a formula, like you had your 10% there for the project management, for the time it's going to take you to manage your outsource partner? Because I feel like every time I've had to do this, there's way more time involved in me explaining the brief, me explaining changes. Now, I know you outlined a lot of things that will help streamline that there, but do you have any kind of formula in mind for how much you budget for that amount of time?
Yeah, and again, we've typically said that 10% of the overall is a reasonable budget to give that. Ultimately, it's that blend, isn't it? That if you use like some of the tips that I've given you, using things like Atarim or markup, etc., that's going to eliminate a lot of the back and forth and you're having to do there anyway. And ultimately, those are great because they're white label tools anyway. So you can send them to your client, get the client to feedback to you, and then that can go straight to the designer or developer, for example. Account for that maybe half an hour every week on a weekly check-in. And maybe times that there's ways that you could try and formulate that, I suppose, in some way to say we estimate this job is going to take is a 30-hour job. That takes us to a 6-week thing, so therefore we need to budget 3 hours for weekly check-ins. Ultimately you want to try and get an agent, the partner, to be somewhat self-sufficient and providing their own or self-serving themselves a lot of the time, and that is possible. Again, you've outlined with a D&D all what's expected, so hopefully we within that what's expected of them should just be get on and do it sort of thing, and then we're on to feedback and then feedback loops, etc. But ultimately, it can be tricky. But I would say 10% is a good number.
And then So one of the parts I've struggled with, and this is just now me personally picking your brain, hopefully others will relate, because I don't already have a relationship in place where somebody knows my preferences and my tool stack and my expectations and all those things, right? I get overwhelmed with work and I have 51-hour tasks that need to get done. And hiring somebody, explaining it to them, going back and forth in proofs, I could have just done it myself by then. So do you have kind of like and then I end up doing it myself and working all night and yada, yada, yada. Do you have kind of like a rule of thumb on like, when do you start out? How big does a project need to be before you'd even consider outsourcing? Are there some that it's just not worth it if you don't already have those relationships in place?
Okay, that's cool. So yeah, it's pretty deep in terms of there's a few little layers to what you've just said there. The first thing you need to look at is, accurately judge what your hourly rate is, because you are the owner, founder, CEO of your own business. And ultimately, if you started working out your costs that you need to live and, what you actually ultimately want to make, your hourly rate suddenly becomes a lot higher than you probably think it is. So, that's the first point to take into consideration. The other thing is this a job that you do regularly? Do you have to do this? I've got a client, for example, that sends us a menu once a week that they need updating on the website. Now, yeah, that takes me all of 5 minutes to log in, find the login, find the passwords, get in, find the page, copy, paste, format the thing because I've done it in Word, and then when I paste it, it's gone all wrong, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so what I presume is a 5 minute job actually ends up being maybe 10, 15 minutes once I've actually then got back in the zone to start doing my other work. If it's repeatable, I'm just wasting 15 minutes of my day every single day. I could train a VA to do that for me. So much easier. Just send it to them, say this needs to be done by 10 o'clock on a Monday morning before the restaurant opens. Done. Again, speculate to accumulate a little bit. It may be a case that, yeah, these things, you think this is going to take me 5 minutes, but if you train somebody to do these things, ultimately they're going to be able to do it again and again, whether it's this client, another client, anything like that. The next point you sort of suggest and put to me was, and I had it and it's just gone. Sorry.
No, I think you answered most of it there. We're kind of talking about how big that job needed to be.
Yeah, that was it. So now, again, we could talk about 15-minute jobs and find somebody. Obviously, you shouldn't have one VA or one designer developer doing like a 15-minute job for you every single week. That's probably a little out there, but there's a really good resource, and I'll try and put it into our outsourcing academy like tonight if I can, of all the things you can outsource, and that's not just like web design, graphic design, etc. It's like literally a list of jobs that you can literally go through and tick, 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 tick. I can outsource all that, and then you start bundling up these things. So in terms of a project, I mean, if I was given a project, for example, a brochure site, great. Let's get it off my decks because I want to work on the really big project that's exciting me. I mean, some people get excited by brochure projects and get overwhelmed by the big e-commerce site, for example. Again, it depends on your project and what you like doing, because ultimately if you want to maintain and still do a bit of development, as I'm sure we all do. I mean, I still sneakily get involved sometimes, even though I've got a whole team of people, because I still love doing it. But yeah, ultimately it's do what you love, and but also just do what's actually going to be beneficial to your business. And I say, if your hourly rate, let's say, is $150, once you've worked out that how much I'd want to make, etc. If you can outsource that to somebody who's charging it out at $35, $50 or whatever, then why wouldn't you? You're making bank every single time. So yeah, it's going to be more profitable, and you can go work on the bigger projects, chase the bigger fish, chase different clients, improve your marketing, start a YouTube channel.
There you go. Spend more time in the admin bar, goofing off.
Yeah.
One more from me. So there's part of this when you find somebody, you think they're a good fit, you give them a test project, whatever it may be. You're still going to have some back and forth, some training. All that's to be expected to get them up to date, 100% where you'd want to be, probably never even 100%. But how do you determine when it's time to cut bait versus when do I just need to keep investing in this person? Because I've seen a lot of people get in that where like They went through the messy process. They eliminated people. They made 5 different hires and fires. They finally found somebody and they think it's good, but every time it's kind of a pain in the butt. And they don't know, they have that sunk cost fallacy of, well, I've already invested 20 hours into training this person and I don't want to just let all that go, but they're not producing what I want. Do you have any tips on like, how do you know when it's time to cut bait with somebody?
I mean, that situation also is, I mean, I have to say, is tenfold harder when you actually employ them as well. So be thankful that you're on that end of the scenario as opposed to the other way. In terms of that, I mean, it's a really cool question because I think we've all been there. Is that point where you've gone through maybe 1 or 2 projects and it's just like, I have done something like that, or I wish you just turned around that homepage quick because I needed that last week, and it was like, ultimately again, talk to the partner. This is a relationship. Build it and say, look, have there's different words for it. I like using the word post-mortem because it sounds grim, but have a post-mortem or a debrief, if you will, on every project with freelancers, and just highlight, this is like an adult relationship ultimately. It's not like it's like the same relationship you have with your wife or your husband or partner. You just need to communicate and just say, this was really cool. The project went really well. Ultimately, really happy, and the client's super happy. Here's a few things that I noted that I'd like you to consider for the next time you do this with us. When I say that our deadline, I need to get this out by Friday, could you try and just get it out by Friday, or better, it's Thursday, because that makes me really happy. I can give you a little bit of feedback, for example. And yeah, a lot of the time, I find it funny. It's probably it may be a male thing because I know a lot of us guys don't like talking about our feelings and stuff like that. And maybe it's kind of the case that you just need to just open up and just say that I'd love it if you could, do this, etc. At the end of the day, these are people that are working for you. They're not going to go, yeah, you know what, screw off. I'm not doing that, and I'm going to go. As long as I'm saying they're there to impress you. They're there to work for you. So and get more work from you. And so they're not going to turn around and say, no, no way, I'm not going to do that sort of thing. And if they do say no, take it on board. Maybe it's something that something in your process that you're thinking, maybe I need to tweak that. Maybe I need to have a look at how I'm presenting this. Am I creating unrealistic deadlines, for example, for my freelancers? Involve them in that chat to them, communicate, ask them, hey, when do you reckon you'll be able to get this homepage? I want to give them a really solid date. And they'd go, yeah, I can do it by next Thursday. And they're going to deliver on that. And if they don't, then there's a different conversation to have there if they fail on those sort of commitments. But ultimately, yeah, communication. It's all it is.
So much of it is like when you've done this so long by yourself, you forget how much information you just store in your head that isn't written down anywhere. Like you have this long history with a client and how they like things, all this stuff. And if you don't communicate that to someone, how are they supposed to know? But you just have so much stored in your head that outsourcing,
exactly. And it is really so hard down. Because I remember back to my solo days, and it literally was like handing like your baby over to somebody and going, I've nurtured this client for the last 5 years. They're my highest paid client, but I really need you to do these little mini tasks that we've all built up over the 5 years of relationship with a client. And it's just like, please don't screw this up, because they're one of my favorite clients. I love working with them. They pay us really well. It's always on time, and it's scary. I get it, but again, you've got to work through these things, because ultimately you need to do 1 or 2 things in business. You either need to grow and scale the business up and get more clients in and get bigger, or you're just building up a pipeline effectively. So you and only you are always going to be busy. Ultimately, you're going to need some sort of outsource help at some point, and hopefully some of the tips I've given today help with that. And I'm really happy to, if anybody's got some individual scenarios or anything that they want to chat with me, jump on to a chat with me, either LinkedIn or through our website. Jump on, I'll be happy to book a call and run through some of the issues that they're having.
Excellent. And I would definitely recommend everybody go sign up to that link the adminbar.com or the admin.bar/outsource. See, even I screwed it up. Ben put together like a whole portal you log into, and a lot of the things he mentioned today, the discovery blueprint documents in there, functionality document, request for quotation template, development QC checklist, the project cost calculator. There's lots of stuff already in here that's totally free.
And there's more to come. There's more to come from that as well. So
more to come. Yeah, excellent. Well, Ben, I really appreciate you doing this with us today. I can't tell you how much I really appreciate you. I've looked up to you for a long time, especially on these topics, because you've grown such a big, helpful agency, and you've helped me out a ton. So I'm just really, really grateful that you come on and share all this with everybody.
It's been a real honor. Thank you, Carl.
All right, excellent. I hope everybody got something out of today. Like Ben said, if you want to follow with him, you can do so. Definitely go sign up for that Academy and get a hold of all those free resources. And you can also probably just ping Ben inside the Admin Bar community. I'm sure he'll respond there too. So hope everybody has an awesome rest of their Monday, and we'll catch you all in the next one. All right. Bye-bye.
Yep.